Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Monday, August 8th, 2022. This is episode 32 of Sanctuary. I'm really excited to have everyone on the call tonight and anyone out there listening in the replay. So every week I go into meditation with Spirit, who I call the Holy Spirit or Great Spirit, the part of God, which allows us to kind of see more of an eagle eye perspective and get a wider vantage point on what's going on in our lives so that we can come from a more responsive and nourishing place, more loving place, rather than maybe an emotionally reactive place or a place that is setting us back or devolving us in some way. And so when I go into meditation, I'm often listening to music on Pandora. And so you'll hear lyrics come through that Spirit has activated. There's phrases that are often amusing that Spirit will come up with to help me understand the concepts that want to come through. And at any point in time, there is also the ability to jump in for anyone who's on the call with anything that is speaking to your heart or anything that you would like to bring up. The very first energy this evening, it was funny, Spirit had three names for the light transmission tonight. The first was Who Let the Lions Out, to like the Who Let the Dogs Out. And this feeling that the lion is very symbolic right now. Not only are we moving through the lion gateway today, but the energy of being bold, of having strength, of being connected to God through a personal relationship. Having the ability to have power that is coming from a true source. And also sometimes lion has been used to describe troubles or enemies coming from beyond in a way where we would need some divine protection. And so this feeling from Spirit that the lions are out right now to devour anything that is not harnessed to soul, anything that is not cleaving to the Holy Spirit, that is cleaving to love and wisdom. And the final or the second theme that Spirit brought up here was Where's the Beef? And for any of you who were around in the 80s, this I think was a Wendy's commercial, but it kind of grew into this idiom of feeling out the substance of something. You know, does this idea, the situation or event have like actual true merit to it? Or is this just smoke and mirrors or sleight of hand? And Spirit said there's going to be a lot of smoke and mirrors and sleight of hand and distractions going on. And so we're encouraged to observe the spectacle. And that was the theme that Spirit finally had me land on, that the other two kind of fell into, which is that we're encouraged to take a step back from participating in a reactive way right now. Especially, we talked about last week, it's a very electric time. And if we are not creating space in our mental, physical, and emotional fields, it's going to feel very amplified and possibly even very uncomfortable, especially to the nervous system. And one of the things Spirit brought up tonight is that the mirror of the outside world, what we might call, through the looking glass, when we're looking at this matrix or this hologram of reality, which is actually showing us our thoughts from the past in physical form. But it's a very confrontive mirror right now. And Spirit says as well, there's a lot of things going on in our individual and personal lives, not only collectively, that's causing that mirror to really come right into our face. And from the spiritual perspective, that broader perspective, everything is moving according to divine plan. And yet Spirit acknowledges that from the human perspective, it can feel very terrifying and overwhelming and disorienting and confusing. So we're encouraged to understand that everything that we're going through right now is a systems upgrade, both individually and collectively. And it's tuning us or training us into a receptivity, a much deeper receptivity that is going to allow us to create space on all levels in order to access and embody these new light frequencies that are entering the planet, that are really opening the high heart. And we talked about the zeal point chakra at the back of the skull, really allowing us to connect to our divinity in a way that the soul has not ever experienced on Earth, and certainly a connection that has not been experienced in some time due to the amount of separation that we have created on this planet. So as we move through this infinity portal where the lions are coming forth to devour that which is not in alignment with soul. We are encouraged, once again, Spirit says, to observe the spectacle, to take a step back, to kind of go behind what some call the short wall, where, it's not that we are detached from reality, where we are, saying, I'm above that or I'm removed from that. We're witnessing it, and we're allowing it to move through us, through God consciousness, through the lens of the Creator, so that not only can we understand it through the discernment of the Holy Spirit, but we have the ability to act in accordance from a, once again, responsive rather than a reactive place. And some of the supporting energies that Spirit is going to bring forward tonight to help us observe this spectacle rather than, become part of it, is engaging our higher reason, engaging our divine mind. And I'll talk more about that as we go on, but also to really focus on our breathing, to notice if we're taking kind of little sips of breath or shallow breaths, and to instead kind of soften and deepen, because we're really being encouraged to stay grounded, to keep our attention in the here and now. We go back to that electricity, that amplification, where it's going to be very easy to have both anxiety about the future as well as non-localized anxiety just from what is going on around us. So keeping our grounded attention in the here and now is going to allow us to kind of easily navigate this storm that Spirit talked about last week, and allow us to really stay attuned during it, so that we can be in the eye of it and actually have an enjoyable time and thrive, despite the fact that our boat is intended to be tossed around right now from the powers that were. And the last supporting energy we'll talk about tonight is what Spirit referred to as change the scenery, meaning if we find ourselves stuck in habitual patterns, if we find ourselves kind of following the same routine or the same groove every day, that we're encouraged to just do something a little bit different. Maybe take a different route home, or, just shift something slightly, tweak something, even just, the way we do our morning routine, maybe changing the order, just to shift up the programming. Because we talked last week that there's a lot of narratives being offered right now. And this is really, the time of the dark magician versus the person who is able to connect with their I am presence through God and to be a true Merlin on this planet, to shift these inverted timelines back to their original organic blueprints. And so we are encouraged to pay attention to what are we being shown, what narratives, what stories are we being offered to believe in? Because we talked about last week that the powers that were are not creator beings. They do not have the ability anymore to connect with soul and to receive that divine inspiration. So they can only be God mimics, meaning they can create stories and hope that the human latches onto those stories and then creates that dream for them. So if we are staying within our grounded attention and attuned to our higher reason, really within the breath, and being open to the Holy Spirit, being open to changing that scenery and getting out of some of our ruts, Spirit is saying we will be the Merlin, and we will be the remedy or the antibody to what is happening with this sleight of hand and this distraction, and that which is trying to take our focus away from the organic timelines of soul in which we are actually truly moving. I'm going to take a moment and open up the floor and check the chat. The very first lyrics to come through were, ever since the day we first met, God created love that he had kept. You are loved, and nothing's going to change that. Don't be scared. It's all right. God has given us this love, and he will never let it fall apart. He will never leave our side. And the feeling here from Spirit that we are moving collectively into a place where many people will have to come to their knees in prayer or come to a relationship with God that they may not have had to before. It's one of those things where, a fish doesn't know it's in water until we remove the water, or we create that separation. And sometimes there has to be a moment of truth that, we create on the soul level in order to have this reconnection with our source, with that true awareness, so that we remember that, we are not the person creating this reality. We are the co-creator. And when we can really engage that attitude, we start to live a life that is not only bringing peace and harmony and abundance into our lives, but our very presence is then changing the soul of the space of everywhere that we are going, because we are allowing ourselves to be that divine conduit of grace and allowing that love and that wisdom to flow through us. So this supporting energy of engaging higher reason, Spirit speaks to this because the collective of humanity is very unsure right now of what is actually true and what is fear and what is illusion talking. And Spirit speaks to our human selves feeling insecure and threatened, consciously and definitely unconsciously. And to know that we are safe, that this is actually a time of discernment and separating fact from fiction. And each human is being given the opportunity to kind of fall sway to the spell, or to really deepen into their own level of discernment through going inward and responding to life's challenges in a more grounded, neutral way, instead of just emotionally reacting to whatever situation is in front of us. We're encouraged to call on Spirit to provide this wise discernment in every moment and to trust that it will come. And to also rise above rushing emotions. So once again, this time of electricity, of amplification, of course, it can lead to mental anxiety, but it can also lead to really fluctuating emotions. And Spirit referred to these as emotionally charged rapids of the moment, to remain detached and to observe the situation objectively, and in all capital letters, to take nothing personally. As hard as that may be, we're really encouraged not to assume another's intent right now, that we can be creating whole stories based off of these assumptions. Instead, to remain calm and available to all points of view without feeling defensive. And, it's easy to say that, don't feel defensive. But I think what Spirit really means here is that, we may feel that defensiveness rise up, and then to kind of take a moment, take that deep breath, and to ask, what are the other points of view that are being shown to me right now? And how can I remain receptive to that? Specifically, resisting emotional drama, Spirit said, no matter how enticing that might be, recognizing that it has an addictive lure, and including righteous anger. And Spirit says this is a tricky one, because righteous anger is something that, feels important to hold in the body for a certain amount of time. And yet, if we continue to live from that place, we are then, once again, Spirit says, seeing through the smoke and mirrors of the projected reality rather than tuning into our own intuition and instinct. So how do we organize our thoughts right now? Well, Spirit says preferably through a meditative, a prayer practice, or some type of soul inquiry where we are reflecting inward more than we are questioning outward. That is the am I moving into the I am. And we do this because we start to realize that we will receive all of our answers from the divine when we are willing to go into this space. And we no longer have to seek advice outside of ourselves, because through this meditation, through this prayer and this inquiry, we become that living prayer where we are the channel and the access to this information at all times. It also helps, Spirit says, to stay out of the thought swirls by engaging in practices of stillness and quietude, particularly in nature, and removing ourselves from the endless spirals of conflict that others are creating or that the world is giving to us at large, as this helps to restore our equilibrium during a turbulent time. We are moving through a very fast, rapid pace of releasing our victim consciousness. And Spirit says, ask for a vision of your life and allow logic to lead over any reactive emotional states right now. So once again, we're really being encouraged to step back from any blame, any type of situation where we start to feel victimized by what has happened to us or what's occurring, and instead to ask Spirit for the discernment of what we need, the wisdom we need to move through it, as well as a vision of our lives moving forward if we are experiencing something that maybe was not the plan that we necessarily had in mind. I'm going to take a few minutes or a few seconds here before moving on to the next theme and open up the floor. We are in a time of patience, of active waiting, of going slowly, and of really focusing on our wellness, and particularly the wellness of our light body or our energy body, which then leads to the wellness of our physical body. And there are, as we've talked about on many other calls, a lot of opportunities right now for us to sink below the weave, to kind of fall into that soup that would strip us of that wellness. And yet Spirit says, if our wellness is our focus, and particularly if we are creating space through meditation and prayer and soul inquiry, we can trust that we are right place, right time, and we are once again going to be in the eye of that storm rather than having, our boat rocked all over the ocean. Patience is called for in all things right now across the board. And we're encouraged to notice if we are rushing or feeling a sense of urgency around anything, and instead to slow down, to breathe, and to ask Spirit to guide us into calming practices which help us to create space in our mind, body, and spirit. So if we don't know what those practices are yet, Spirit is saying, I will guide you to them, but you do need to ask. It's that whole law of free will. We're also encouraged to allow the life-giving elements of nature to replenish our bodies, as well as our soul essence, to stop and smell the flowers, to breathe in the sunlight, and to know that as we choose to rise above complaining and victim mentality, we begin to move into this frequency of appreciation and gratitude, where all manners of miracles can appear simply through our perception shifting. Once again, do not be in a hurry right now. The heart needs this time to open. Let nature take its course. Allow life to unfold without directing it. Savor the moment, and this time of waiting will not feel difficult. The heart knows what the ego resists learning. Patience pays off in deep and meaningful ways as we allow Spirit to guide us in catching the perfect wave. So we don't have to know what's coming next. We just have to follow the nudge, follow the prompt when it comes upon us. And this is a felt sense, more so than something that is a vision or being downloaded through, the upper chakras. And Spirit wants us to know that we've worked long and hard, and our dreams are now emerging into this physical reality. But we are encouraged to stay in rhythm with the heartbeat of Earth. And we had that come through on another call, to connect, put our feet on the ground, put our hands on the trees and the soil, to consciously connect with God in our deepest of hearts, and to relax and stay the course, trusting our intuition and the process. Once again, this grounded attention that's needed in the here and now. And to follow up this part of the reading, we got the lyrics that we got before, which is from the song The Bones. And we're in the home stretch of the hard times. We took a hard left, but we're all right. The house don't fall when the bones are good. And so Spirit, once again, reminding us, trust our intuition, our connection to our own divinity within, to weather these coming storms, and to know that the house does not fall when the bones are good. Going to take a second here before the last two themes of the evening and check the chat and open up the floor. The next supporting energy we received is similar to one we received a few calls ago. And it was all about accepting Pandora's gift, this gift of the unknown that could either, we could walk into terrified, or we could walk into this unknown, knowing that we are supported and uplifted and in the right place, right time when we are connecting within. However, Spirit says collectively we are about to enter a process which is going to trigger a lot of emotions. But if we ask for help, the answers will be triggered also. And Spirit is also acknowledging here that to many, it's going to take them to places that feel like the end of the world. And this goes back to that metaphorical experience of collective death that we are moving through so that we can actually understand ourselves as creators. And Spirit says, ultimately, this leads to new life, new revelation, and letting go of our shame beliefs, and particularly around punishment or this need to take ourselves to task over something, or to endlessly, flagellate ourselves for something that we've done wrong. So we are letting go of these beliefs of shame and punishment and freeing the soul from the torment of the distortions and false authority of this inverted matrix, knowing that we do not deserve to be brought to task, and we are instead learning through divine love and experience. Breaking free from the weighty criticisms of the world and disobeying anything and everyone that is not serving love. We are the leaders of the soul revolution and the light bearers of peace, comfort, hope, and reassurance. And here, Mr. Rogers stepped forward, with him always talking about how in a crisis, the helpers step forward. And Spirit said the helpers, the meek and the humble, are stepping forward now. And the inner talent and ability within that is God-given seeks now to be recognized and shared. The lyrics, stand side by side and you'll make it. And finally, the last supporting energy this evening, Spirit talked about changing the scenery, that our ego may simply just have too narrow of a view. And it may appear as we only have a few options, but Spirit said once we reconnect, we get back into that inquiry through meditation and prayer, Spirit will show us that vision if we ask. But it's important to shake things up and change up the scenery. Even small detours from our habitual patterns will make large inroads in the weave. Here we're encouraged to go outside, and Spirit says, really go outside, be there, take a long walk, enjoy life for life's sake. Enjoy, appreciate, and live in a state of gratitude. This living prayer of thank you is immensely powerful and magnetic. With a change of scenery, we create space for Spirit to inspire us with unlimited options just out of our periphery, introducing us to new ideas, different people, and inspiration. The ego attempts to keep us safe in our comfort zone and in our familiar territories, and yet these patterns are holding us back. We're encouraged to resist the ego's desire to keep us chained in and instead to do something different. And particularly, Spirit says, do it on a whimsy or do it on a whim. Get out, get about, and begin to embody a fresh perspective. So these are our themes for the evening, going back to the beginning here of observing the spectacle. Who let the lions out? So we're being shown from the spiritual perspective that there are forces afoot right now that are here to help us evolve into this next stage of human evolution. And while it may not always feel comfortable to the human self, we are being encouraged to know that this is a time of discernment where we really begin to understand where's the beef, what has substance, feeling things out, what is true, what is false, and no longer relying on an outside authority like the news or the government or a religious structure or social media or our friends and family to tell us what is true, but instead going inward and finding out what is true from within ourselves. And lastly, really just knowing that even though it can appear that it's this time of survival meltdown that Spirit spoke of last week, it's also this return to sovereignty. And when we engage this higher reason, when we take this step back and we come from a non-reactive place, we take that moment to breathe and stay grounded with our attention in the here and now. We have the ability, we have the resources then to change the scenery, to step out of our habitual patterns, and to begin to live a life that is co-created. And from that place, every moment becomes a place of learning and of wisdom and of joy. And even the contrasts that seem uncomfortable are usually quite amusing and quite beautiful when we are willing to take that step back. So as we move into this amplified frequency, We can trust that the discernment within is coming alive, and we can train our minds to begin to observe the spectacle that is taking place, to engage in that higher divine mind, to take the deep breath, to take the step back, and to allow this process to unfold with our greatest amount of trust. So these are the themes that Spirit has brought forth for tonight. Once again, this is a systems upgrade. We're encouraged to stay in a receptive place, to create space to access and embody these new light frequencies. And the last thing that Spirit brought through is that all are returned to their root and essence.